Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. So today we're going to do another episode of the Breaking Down Songs series, the place where we take a closer look at some of my favorite songs from all kinds of different bands and analyze the lyrics. Because when we do that, we gain a deeper appreciation for the music we listen to. If there's a specific band you guys want me to talk about in a future video, please leave a comment down below. If I like the band and I'm pretty familiar with their discography, I'll probably do it. Today, as promised, we're going to talk about The Doors, led by Jim Morrison, a man who loved his alcohol, notorious for his drinking. He could drink enough to knock down an elephant, only rivaled by Andre the Giant. You know, Jim Morrison had a pretty charismatic personality. He was extremely unpredictable. You never knew what he was going to say or do. Over time, his bandmates and fans both got frustrated by the quality of the live shows. The live shows kept going downhill as the Doors went on because Jim's drinking kept spiraling out of control. He couldn't perform the way everyone expected. However, Jim was a poet first and foremost. He considered himself a poet, then a songwriter. However, he was still a gifted songwriter. So first, I want to tell you guys what my favorite song is from my top 5 Doors albums. Starting with number 5, Waiting for the Sun, I picked We Could Be So Good Together. I'm not crazy about the Waiting for the Sun album or the Soft Parade. Not my cup of tea. I much prefer the other Doors stuff. So number 4 from their debut album. I'm sure you've heard this song. Break On Through to the Other Side. Signature Doors track. Excellent. Next up from L.A. Woman, their last album, I picked the hard-charging title track. Epic tune. Next up at number 2, we have Morrison Hotel. I picked Peace Frog. A song that stands out to me because Peace Frog was faster paced compared to their other songs. But it still had the familiar, scary lyrics they were known for. So the best of both worlds. Finally, my favorite album has to be Strange Days. I love pretty much every track on there. In the end, I picked Moonlight Drive. Absolutely gorgeous track. Great blend of vocals and harmony. So, which of those songs are we going to talk about today? I'll give you a hint. That's right, Peace Frog. So before we get into Peace Frog, I want to give you guys some background on the Morrison Hotel album, which Peace Frog was on. Morrison Hotel came out in 1970. It sold 1 million copies in America. Had the single Roadhouse Blues, which was a super funky type of song with some swagger thrown in. I like that a lot. It was more well received than their previous 2 albums that I mentioned, The Soft Parade and Waiting for the Sun. They felt like the Doors went back to their roots, what they were known for. They went back to the rock and blues mixture. Like that old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So a lot of people, including me, were happy that the Doors went back to what they did on those first 2 albums. The only difference with Morrison Hotel was there was no epic track at the end like Light My Fire, When the Music's Over, or The End, which was a little strange, but you'll still enjoy the album. It felt like a comeback album in every way. It proved that the Doors were still relevant, that they still deserved their listeners. So now let's get to the lyrics of Peace Frog. We'll go through section by section. Before we start, keep in mind, this is just my interpretation of the lyrics. It's just my opinion. My opinion might be different from yours, which is fine. We all hear these songs differently. There's no right or wrong answer. So let's respect each other's opinions. Now, this is easily the most complex song I've ever analyzed. When I was going through this song, I was struggling to figure out what it meant. Which proves again how great of a songwriter Jim Morrison was. He was terrific. So you're not meant to fully understand any Doors song you listen to. I think if I looked at this song for a year, I still couldn't figure out what it meant. But I'm going to do my best. So here we go, starting off with section 1. It goes, "There's blood in the streets, it's up to my ankles. She came, blood in the streets, it's up to my knee. She came, blood in the streets, it's the town of Chicago. She came, blood on the rise, it's following me. Think about the break of day. She came, and then she drove away. Sunlight in her hair." So the first section, to me, represents a violent place, a violent type of environment. As you can see, as we go along, when he talks about the blood going from his ankles to his knees, that symbolizes how things keep steadily getting worse. It also shows no sign of slowing down, no sign of reversing. It just keeps building up. It also talks about the fight or flight response that we have. You have a choice. You can either confront danger or leave a toxic place. So, even though leaving seems like the cowardly thing to do, sometimes leaving is the only option you have. The longer you stay, the more it affects your state of mind, the more it drags you down, the more it bothers you. Sometimes getting away is the only choice. Moving on to section 2, it says, "She came, blood in the streets, runs a river of sadness. She came, blood in the streets, it's up to my thigh. She came, yeah, the river runs red down the legs of a city. She came, the women are crying red rivers of weeping. She came in town, and then she drove away, sunlight in her hair." Okay, so section 2 talks about how violence isn't necessarily the answer. It's not a good way to solve your problems. It might be referring to the Vietnam War when you think about it, because during the late 60s, early 70s, Vietnam was a huge topic in the U.S. It created the counterculture movement. It was on everyone's mind. So Jim might be referencing that. It would make sense if he did. You might not realize it, but this song tells me that your words and actions can have a profound effect on people later on. Even if that wasn't your intention in the first place, it can create a butterfly effect, where before you know it, people are having to face consequences based on your actions. Even when you're gone, that effect remains. Let's move on to section 3. We get to some poetry here. "Indians scattered on dawn's highway bleeding. Ghosts crowd the young child's fragile eggshell mind." Brilliant lyrics. "Blood in the streets in the town of New Haven. Blood stains the roofs and palm trees of Venice. Blood in my love in the terrible summer. Bloody red sun of fantastic LA." So, section 3 represents a throwback to Jim's childhood possession by a dead Indian. He and his family came across a truck full of dead Indians. Jim believed that one of the spirits of those Indians actually went inside his body and controlled his actions to a certain extent. So he was very much in touch with spirituality and his own mortality. And I believe that part carried over to his lyrics. It had a big effect on what kind of lyrics he wrote. It all went back to that childhood moment. That proves that some wounds never heal, no matter how much time goes by. You can't forget about certain events that happened to you, especially if they shaped who you are. It becomes a chain reaction because ideas and attitudes get passed on to other people in our society. They travel from person to person. Eventually they become the dominant way of thinking. So it shows how big ideas start with one person. Finally, we get to the last section, which says, blood screams her brain as they chop off her fingers. Blood will be born in the birth of a nation. Blood is the rose of mysterious union. There's blood in the streets, it's up to my ankles. Blood in the streets, it's up to my knee. Blood in the streets in the town of Chicago. Blood on the rise, it's following me. So the last section, again, shows us how everything is connected, whether we realize it or not. One thing impacts another. You got to be careful, because if you make the wrong choice or a wrong decision, it can come back to haunt you. So you got to make the right choice before it's too late, because one mistake can grow into a huge problem later on. So now, let's talk about the mood of the song a little bit. What does Peace Frog make you feel like after you listen to it? Or while you're listening to it? Well, I would say pretty mellow until the poetry part. It's kind of confusing. You have a mostly nonchalant type of delivery by Morrison. But then, on the flip side, you have a quick tempo with a carnival style instrumentals in the background. The synthesizers, the keyboards, the guitar, they sound almost friendly, almost welcoming. So it's hard trying to comprehend both things at once. When you hear the lyrics, you expect the instrumentals to match the tone of the dark lyrics, but they don't. They're opposites. It's a far cry from the lyrics. So now let's talk about some themes. Well, I feel like a broken record here, but a theme I noticed was how fast minor issues can spin out of control if you ignore them or don't acknowledge them. If you don't take care of something early on, before you know it, it becomes something that's out of your control. So it's best to deal with the problem before it reaches that point. Next, how we're unaware of how much power we have over our surroundings. This kind of reminds me of Spanish castle magic, how we have control over our environment. And vice versa. Our environment can affect us, and we can affect the environment. Those things can transform very fast. Finally, I'd like to talk about how our choice doesn't shape us, but everyone around us. That's the last theme I noticed. It sticks with them after we're gone. You can still see those effects. They stay with you. So what's the most memorable line from Peace Frog? Well, the lyrics are brilliant. Absolutely genius. It's set up almost like a story or a poem. Some really deep stuff here. I picked, blood will be born in the birth of a nation. which echoes the point I've been driving home this whole video, how one person's actions leads to a chain reaction. It grows and grows until eventually it consumes everyone. So let's go over the strengths and weaknesses real quick. Well, the most obvious strength has to be the depth of the lyrics. Like I said, this is by far the most complex song I've ever looked at. You never know for sure what this song means, probably what any Doors song means. I think Jim intentionally wrote the songs that way. He wanted to make it mysterious and make you think, make you wonder what the song was about. However, you never know for sure. You just keep guessing. So it's really in the eye of the beholder. The next strength is the attention to detail they showed. It reminds me of Pink Floyd. How the composition of the lyrics and the instrumentals feel so intricate, so balanced, so unique. That stuff still holds up even 50 years later. This song still sounds fresh. Finally, the sound quality in general is another highlight. This song feels like everything belonged there. Feels like everything was placed there for a reason. Felt like they knew just what they were doing. Well, the only weakness that I noticed, this is more of a personal gripe, I just wish Jim did more screaming. I'm a fan of the raspier Doors type of songs like You Make Me Real. Those kind of songs. Jim had an unearthly scream. He was magnificent at screaming. So I wish he utilized that in this song. It felt like with the lyrics, he could have easily thrown in some screams. It would have fit well into the song. Finally, on a scale of 1 to 10, how replayable is this song? I wish I could give it 100. It broke my scale, honestly. I think this song surpasses a 10. It's higher than a 10. This song is amazing. I've listened to it so many times, and I still look forward to hearing it again. Something about the song just pulls you in. I think it's the same for almost every Doors song. They were ahead of their time. Much like Pink Floyd or Jimi Hendrix, you can listen to it today and still enjoy the music. So that does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. By the way, I left a link in the description to Peace Frog if you want to listen to it. I'll see you next time. Until then, rock on.